Man, oh man, what a difference a week makes. 1 week ago, on Monday Night Raw, when I did this review, I felt like there was almost nothing to talk about. 1 week later, this Monday Night Raw, there was a ton to talk about, and we're going to get into everything that happened on this 3-hour edition. I say edition, it's like that every week. But it didn't feel like a 3-hour show this week. Like, this was one of the more fun Raws in a long time. And it was not without flaw. There were some things that we can nitpick, and we'll get into that. But overall, we had a big debut of a new character, and what I thought was well done, even though it wasn't what I was hoping for, but it was done as well as it could have been done. We had number one contender crowns for the match with Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, and just craziness with the 24/7 title, the Mike and Maria stuff. I mean, we are going to get into all of that, and yeah, just an absolute turnaround, a 180 from last week's Raw, and supposedly this is the first Raw that Paul Heyman has taken the full reins of his position for this show. So, props to everyone involved in putting that together, because this was far more entertaining to me than any Raw in a while. So, to get us going, we start off with Brock Lesnar entering the ring, and as he's entering, a video package plays of him winning the title last night, cashing in on Seth Rollins. And my note right away was that you notice how Brock Lesnar didn't have to get in the ring and awkwardly cut to a video package on the mic like everyone else does. Yeah. None of that for Brock and Heyman. Heyman cuts the typical "we told you so" sort of promo. There was plenty of heat from the crowd from all this. Heyman even mentions that he has all the stroke around here now, talking about his new role, even though he's not an on-screen authority figure, but I guess it's okay to still assume that, because he also announces the main event match, which is a top 10 all-star cross-brand battle royal, is what they called it. The 10 top stars, I guess, is what they want you to believe, at least. But they go through the names of all of the participants, as he asks the production team that he's going to soon fire, he says, to get that ready. And the 10 participants end up being Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, Big E, Cesaro, who Heyman alludes to. He has personal interest in that one, being the former Heyman associate. Braun Strowman, Rey Mysterio, Baron Corbin, Sami Zayn, who he says is who he hopes wins this match. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Bobby Lashley, which I'm not sure why he's competing at all after what happened at Extreme Rules, but nonetheless, at least he had tape. And Roman Reigns. And those 10 guys would compete in the main event for the number one contendership for the Universal title at SummerSlam. And Heyman ends his promo saying everyone in this universe are Brock's bitches. That was the first bitch of the night, but it would not be the last. We had a 6-man tag with the Usos and Ricochet versus the Revival and Bobby Roode, who is just Bobby Roode now, in case you were wondering. He's no longer Robert Roode. And No entrances for the Revival. They're only the tag team champions. And this ends up being a 2 out of 3 falls match, but it was never said that I heard. So right away, the Usos hit a super kick on one of the Revival, and they tag in Ricochet, who hits Code Breaker and pins him. I thought the match was over, but 2 out of 3 falls. They didn't go to commercial there. Dawson pins one of the Usos with, like, just a flapjack. I mean, it looked like they were setting up for the Shatter Machine, but Wilder got out of the ring, so Dawson just ended up putting the Uso that was in the ring down with like a flapjack move, and that pinned him. So I'm not sure if that's what they actually wanted to do there, but it was strange that was a pin, but there you go. That's what having these 2 out of 3 falls matches does, is that pins are just meaningless, I guess, until it gets to the last fall. They go to commercial after that and come back. Ricochet ends up pinning Bobby Roode for the final fall with a code breaker into a 630. AJ and the club come out. They stand at ringside as Ricochet comes out and dives out on AJ. The Usos help him out, taking out Gallows and Anderson. They have a brawl. The baby faces clear the ring momentarily, but then the Revival and Roode come back in and take out the Usos. Ricochet takes out all 3 of them with a springboard, but AJ comes in with a forearm that turned Ricochet inside out, which looked good in full speed until they played it in slow motion to see how clearly Ricochet was already preparing to flip himself before AJ even touched him. Like, that, the slow-mo replays, they're great to enhance things sometimes, but when it comes to things like this, it just makes it not look as good, because it just makes it clear what just happened. But nonetheless, the Viking Raiders come out after this separate segment, not during all this, but the Viking Raiders come out and they're about to have a squash match. But this time, they have a shrink screen promo that plays as they're entering. This was so rich in material that I took the time to write this promo down verbatim. And to this point, I don't know that they've really had a promo or any sort of talking segment. They've just had squash matches and maybe a few other matches like Hawkins and Ryder, which was still essentially a squash match. But let me read this promo for you. The Viking Raiders is not just a name. It's a way of life. We claim the brutality of our forefathers as our birthrights, and we will rain down the savagery of the Norsemen on any fool who dares stand in the way of our raid. Thrilling dialogue there. Jesus Christ, man. What the hell? Like, I don't know. I'll leave that up to you to interpret, one, what the hell that means, and two, why anyone who is not tripping balls on LSD would say anything like that. They have a squash match against 2 jobbers, and that was it. This when did the Viking Raiders or the Viking Experience or whatever they fucking are? But when did they debut on the main roster? Like right after WrestleMania, right? So like May. We're still on these squash matches. At least this time they got to cut a promo. I don't know. It reminded me genuinely of the Bludgeon Brothers promos that they did in like the woods with just like the ridiculous scripted dialogue, like the whole up is down, down is up. It reminded me somewhat of that. You get a recap video of Undertaker and Roman versus Drew and Shane. And then that leads into a backstage segment that they show from earlier in the night with Cedric Alexander and Drew McIntyre in the locker room. Drew tells Cedric they have unfinished business, says he's going to dismember him, and all sorts of wild threats that, you know, sometimes heels make. Like Samoa Joe is good at this, at basically telling someone he's going to murder them. But the funny thing here was that after McIntyre's done saying this, he says, "I'm just kidding. That would be illegal. But I am going to humble you." Yeah, Drew is a treasure. After that, we get the Drew McIntyre versus Cedric Alexander match. Before the match, they have the recap for last week, and I'm pretty sure they left out the parts where Cedric actually lost the match, and they just ignored that throughout this whole thing. Which begs the question: if you're just going to ignore that Cedric lost that match, then why didn't you just have him win? I don't know. That it was confusing how they've put this together, but it was a fun short match in a typical situation with someone like Drew McIntyre versus cruiserweight to smaller guy like Cedric. It seems like a lot of the time that it'll end up being that the big guy gets 80% of the offense. But this was actually, for a short match, it was. Cedric got a lot of offense in, and I did think he might have hurt himself on the dive he did, because Drew didn't really catch him much, and it didn't look good on Cedric's hips when he landed on the outside. But Cedric ends up winning with a surprise roll-up. I liked that Cedric won with a roll-up in this match, because, for one, it wasn't that he was getting dominated the whole match and then gets a roll-up. At least it was more substance to it. And had this been the only time we saw something like that, the dreaded roll-up, then I would have liked this. But there were a ton more roll-ups to get into. We had Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor, and just to cap that off, Drew will eventually get his rematch against Cedric, I'm sure. And this at least kept Cedric and the Drew feud moving. So Drew will eventually get his rematch, and I'm sure he's just gonna kill Cedric. Which, I mean, I like Cedric a lot, but I don't think they're going to do much with him. But we'll see. I mean, Drew is kind of in that same wavelength of just like, he's on TV every week. He's getting used, but it doesn't seem like he's someone that they have big plans for at this point. So we'll see. Maybe they'll put over Cedric some more, but I don't expect them to. We had Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor. Another short match, and Samoa Joe wins with a roll-up. You heard that right. Samoa Joe, the master of getting rolled up and then showing off his shocked Pikachu face every time, like he's stunned that this could possibly happen to him. It's the one move that he was never able to defend. If someone rolled him up, he was losing. In this case, he finally figured out that he himself can also roll people up. And so he rolls up Balor and gets the win. Which, whatever. I mean, like, they built this match as like a redemption thing for both guys, because they both lost their pay-per-view matches. and then it didn't go. It was probably like 3 minutes before Joe rolled Balor up, and then Joe attacks Balor, tries to put him in the coquina clutch, but Balor rolls out, hits a double stomp to Joe's chest, hits him with the sling blade, and then a coup de grace to get his heat back, I guess, because he just got rolled up. Because we can't have one person looking stronger than the other in a match. No, we have to. We do have to even the playing field as much as possible. But Finn celebrates, and this is where we get to the good stuff. Finn celebrates, his music is playing, when all of a sudden the ominous sound effects play. Finn Balor's music sort of gets cut off. The lights gradually go out. Like, you could see it in the crowd section by section. It would, one section would go out, and then another, until all of the lights were out. We hear commotion in the ring, and the lights, they don't really, I wrote down that they flicker on and off. It was more like there was just like spotlights coming in and out. But you were able to see that it was indeed the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, who has Finn Balor in position for the Sister Abigail, and the lights would come back on. He's in the mask, the full Fiend gear that we were shown in the Firefly Funhouse, and he puts Balor down with the Sister Abigail. The lights go back out. We hear a Bray Wyatt laugh, and that is it. Now, I thought that what they did as far as just Bray goes, the presentation of how they debuted him, I was completely fine with. And, you could say that it's hokey and the whole thing with the lights, and that it's the same old Bray, just with a mask, maybe, and a Bray in sheep's clothing or something. I don't know, but you could say that, and I think that's a fair argument, but I don't know. I'm willing to let the hokiness of it pass with this character, just because there's no other way to really do it. I mean, we all saw the Firefly Funhouse and everything that they did in that. So for him to debut and then not have some level of hokiness that we have to sort of disregard and suspend disbelief for, but I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to give this whole thing a chance to see what it does. If Wyatt's first program is going to be with Balor, I don't know. Like, it seems like a flat start to me. And they could do the whole Demon versus Fiend thing, and it could be a big deal that it's the first time the Demon loses since being called up to the main roster. And you could make that a big deal, I guess. Like, my idea that we talked about yesterday on the Extreme Rules review was just, and they could have done it with the way that this night was set up if Bray Wyatt had surprisingly entered the Battle Royal. If Bray would have the match with Brock at SummerSlam and dismantle and destroy him, and that would be the way to immediately establish Bray as the next monster, the new beast. But I can't complain with what they did here. I thought it worked for me. It was presented well, so I won't complain. We'll see where it goes. We'll keep an open mind on it. Throughout the night, we had this 24/7 ridiculousness with Drake Maverick and his wife. They check into a hotel, and they're registered under the name Mr. and Mrs. 24/7 Champion. R-Truth comes in. He comes in after Drake and Renee leave, and asks the guy at the desk if anyone registered under the name Hornswoggle, and he tries to slip him a 20 to find out this information. And even when he spelled it, he told the guy lowercase h O-R-N Swoggle. More on that later. There was another one of these Street Profits segments, which I can't do them justice. I can't even recap them, but they're doing a lot, and they're showing a lot of charisma and all the swagger that they sort of have, but it's the substance wise, there's nothing there. They're just talking about what is happening on the show. So I don't know, like they're like the street narrators. Maybe that could be their new name on the main roster. You know, we like to change names when people get called up, so the Street Profits can be turned into the Street Narrators. Zack Ryder comes out is in the ring for a match. He gets a hometown pop as they're in Long Island. And they show Mike Kanellis at the curtain about to enter for this match. And Maria comes in and says she will be taking this match instead. She calls Mike a loser and says she has a better chance as a pregnant woman of defending their unborn baby's name. Which I guess is the purpose of the match, is to defend the unborn baby's name. I don't know. So Maria comes out for this match. The ref, of course, stops her. You can't compete when you are pregnant. But Mike comes down. He says, "I've got this." And he says, "I'll show you." He gets in the ring. The match starts. Ryder hits a Rough Rider and pins Mike Kanellis right away. When you're losing in 3 seconds to Zack Ryder, you would think you couldn't go any further into the ground. And I feel like this is what we're doing. Like, this is from the segment a few weeks ago where Maria cut Mike Kanellis' balls off on live TV. We are, like, you would have thought at that point that it could not get any lower. But that's what they're trying to do. They're challenging themselves to see if they can make Mike look even worse. And they accomplished that tonight. So after Mike loses to Zack Ryder in 5 seconds, Maria cuts a promo, and she says, my unborn child had a better chance of winning this match. I don't know where this is going, if there's a payoff, or if they just want to bury Mike as far into the earth as they possibly can. But who would have thought that he could keep going lower? Like, I'm interested to see what they could do next to make him look even worse. So I guess we'll see where this continues to go. There's a 6-man tag. We have the Club, AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson against the Lucha House Party, Kalisto, Gran Metalik, and Lince Dorado. Ricochet comes in, and he pulls AJ off the apron, and he beats him down on the outside. There was no disqualification. Instead, we're told that the referee will attempt to restart the match as they go to commercial. So then they come back, the match is restarted, and after all that nonsense, to just all for the sake of not having wrestling on commercial, they actually had what I would say was a pretty fun TV match. The Luchas got some stuff in, surprisingly. I figured that this was going to be another quick squash sort of match. But Luchas actually got some stuff in. Kalisto had a pretty good hot tag sequence, but eventually Gallows and Anderson snuff it out with the help of AJ distracting Kalisto on the outside. Anderson and Gallows hit him with the Boot of Doom. They tag in AJ to finish Kalisto with the Calf Crusher. He taps out immediately. AJ refuses to let it go and continues to wrench on it as viciously as he possibly can, and eventually kicks Kalisto out of the ring. Pissed off AJ Styles is entertaining television. I will give it that much. And I have missed heel AJ, so this was all fine with me. So now, now we get to the downer of this show. We had a fatal four-way elimination women's match. The winner was set to face Becky Lynch at SummerSlam for the title. The names in this match include Alexa Bliss, Carmella, Naomi, and Natalya. Now, you can tell me which of those four would get you excited for a match with Becky Lynch. And I will wait patiently on your response. Becky comes out to watch the match before they go to commercial. They made a big deal about that Becky was there, that she's so tough after what happened. I mean, she took one end of days. Like, I'm not ready to celebrate that, but she limps to the ring. And so early on, just to recap some of this, Carmella tried to pin Naomi and Natalya like 8 times straight and screamed because it was not working. I don't know what exactly she expected to happen on the 8th pin attempt on the same 2 people after doing nothing to them. It felt like old Teal Carmella with the annoying shrieking. I can go without that. Throughout the whole match, Alexa Bliss would try to hide outside the ring as much as she could. And so she hides out as the other 3 fight in the ring. Carmella takes out Natty and Naomi with super kicks. Alexa comes in. Ever the opportunist rolls up Carmella for an elimination. And Carmella is the first one gone. So now at this point, we're down to Naomi, Bliss, and Natty. And at this point, they go to a commercial. And it wasn't... they went to a commercial during the match. So I guess there might have been some wrestling during that commercial break. I'm not sure. There was a cool little innovative spot, I'll give them, that Natalya puts Naomi in a surfboard submission, and Bliss comes in and tries to pin Natalya from underneath Naomi while she's still in the position, in the submission, rather. And Natty kicks out, and then Bliss runs away again. And Naomi and Natalya were content to just let Bliss continue to just watch this match from the outside. So the match just got really strange at this point. Like, the sequence of this match was Alexa would be outside, and Natalya would put a rest hold on Naomi. And then later, maybe Bliss would take out Natalya, and then she would put a rest hold on Naomi. And then Natalya would get back in, and she would end up putting a rest hold on Naomi. It was like we saw that So we saw that over and over again, and eventually the crowd just, by like the fifth time, the crowd just started booing. There was just something off about like this whole. Once it got down to these three, like it felt like it felt like they added time to this match or something, and like they weren't prepared for that, so they had to stretch the match out. And I don't know that happened. I'm just speculating. Like something was strange to me about it, and that makes sense to me. That maybe some other segment went short for whatever reason, and they had to extend this match, and so they had to do that on the fly. And when you have to do that, the one thing you can do is put a hold in and set up whatever you're gonna do. So maybe that's what happened. I don't know, but either way, this whole the whole thing with the last three of these girls being in there, it just went on so much longer than it needed to, and that did not resonate well with the crowd, who end up giving "this is boring" chants. At one point, they were chanting about John Cena. They were doing the Cena sucks and let's go Cena, Cena sucks and all that. Just and then like this is boring and all that. And so Nikki randomly grabs a mic and demands that everyone cheer Alexa. Which, I mean, at least it did get heat because they started saying that you suck. And I would call it we want this match to be over heat. Natalya eventually puts Bliss away with a or I'm sorry, I skipped ahead, but Natalya pins Naomi with a roll-up. Imagine that. So both the eliminations were with roll-ups. And I kind of read that in reverse order. Natalya pinned Naomi, and then Nikki did the promo. And eventually, Natalya puts away Bliss with a sharpshooter. She taps out, and that does get a good reaction, just because I think they were happy that this match was over. And I don't know. Maybe it was a bit too harsh to do those chants, but like I get it. Like the match wasn't good. Like, and people have complained about that already, including Naomi and Alexa themselves. Well, Naomi at least just posted a sad face emoji, but Alexa was more into it, actually saying that she was disappointed. But I mean, I get that, or I think the word she used was disrespectful, and I can get that. I mean, it is, in a way, it's disrespectful to take that stance as a crowd, to say that this is boring, or to do anything else like that, like the beach ball stuff that they've done before, the counting down with the clock in the Rollins and Ziggler match. But it's just like, this match wasn't good. So I get why they were doing that. I mean, people generally have like when you're there for that whole 3-hour show, and it's easy to just have a short attention span, and when something isn't good, you're ready to get that over with and go to the next thing. So I get where the crowd comes from, and I don't, obviously they don't mean it as disrespectful, but I also see the other side of the argument that that's how it comes off. So Natalya is the number one contender for Becky Lynch's Women's Championship at SummerSlam, and when it happened, like I couldn't be less excited. Like, Natalya versus Becky, just we've been there before, and Natalya has not been featured at all. So it's just out of nowhere. But they did something after this to at least build that up, as Natalya has an interview after, says she can't wait to face her friends at SummerSlam. And when she said that, I was just like, oh god, here we go. The only thing Natalya has in her gimmick is that everyone is her friend. That's all there is, and that's all women's storylines end up being in this damn company sometimes. But this went intense because Becky grabs a mic and she obliterates Natalya verbally. Says if Natalya expects to have a nice friendly match at SummerSlam, then she's in for a rude awakening, and Becky will wipe the floor with her. And she says at the end, Becky, that she's learned she does a lot better in war than she does in love. And Natalya just comes back and says, you must not be a very good lover then, bitch. That's our second bitch of the night. Natty says she's going to rip out Becky's greasy orange hair, take the horseshoe out of her ass, and beat the hell out of her. That was a line. They jaw jack off Mike, and a ref comes in, and Natty leaves. I'm not at all into Natalya as a challenger, but this was at least a good segment to build some sort of personal feud going into the match that can hopefully carry the storyline and make it interesting. Yeah, and Becky, at least it felt like the Becky of old, at least a little bit. She's trying to come back out, the old Stone Cold Becky Lynch, instead of the Becky Lynch that just gets tied to Lacey Evans' ankle and has to carry her around. But yeah, there at least there was more than just, oh, you're my friend. We're gonna have a nice friendly match, and I'm gonna friendly beat you. At least there was more than that. So the next bit was random as hell. Dolph Ziggler apparently requested to be on Miz TV. Miz introduced Dolph, and Dolph just goes at Miz for being a yes man and kissing ass and just being happy to be there. Happy with, and it's just so out of nowhere too, because like, wouldn't Miz be the opposite of a yes man, being with his feud against the authority of Shane McMahon? Like, I'm not sure I get that. So it just didn't make much sense to me. But yeah, Dolph goes on and says that Miz is happy with fortune and fame, just like his wife. And Miz attacks him, throws some punches, and Dolph escapes. And that's it. So I guess the purpose for this is that they finally decided that they wanted to give Miz someone that he could actually beat. Because he can't beat Shane McMahon. We all know that Shane McMahon is the best wrestler that ever lived. And you may not beat him. But you can have this Dolph Ziggler, and you can beat him instead. So we go back to this 24/7 stuff. Drake and his wife are ready to consummate their marriage in this hotel room. And Drake is wearing a, seemingly it was nothing but the 24/7 title. But he did at least have underwear on. But the room service comes in with their champagne, and Drake is trying to hurry them along and get them out of there so they can do the deed. This guy doesn't leave, the room service guy, and so Drake gets up, and he then recognizes that this is a referee, and the ref starts to take off the coat or whatever he was wearing, and he's wearing the referee shirt, and so Drake goes crazy looking for for whoever is trying to capture his 24/7 championship from him. And he's looking underneath the bed. He's like throwing things everywhere, but he didn't think to look under the rolling table that the room service guy brought in with him that had a curtain covering what was underneath it. And so R-Truth pokes his head out, and as Drake is trying to find him, R-Truth comes in. He rolls up Drake, who surprisingly kicks out. He kicked out of the schoolboy. And so R-Truth does a crossbody to Drake, pinning him on the bed, 1, 2, 3. And he gets his title back. He takes it off of Drake. And then he gets in Drake's wife's face and says, "I hope y'all ain't constipated no more." And leaves. This was A1 material. And it was topped off by when they go to commentary on on camera. And the funny thing is they're trying to transition into the Roman Reigns SB stuff. And so Corey Graves, in recapping this segment, says he would have utilized a small package. I died at this. Between this and like the Mike Kanellis stuff, I was laughing so much at some of this stuff. We had the main event of the Battle Royal, the what they call it, the top 10 All-Stars, whatever, cross-brand Battle Royal. Everyone enters, and then Brock comes down, and he takes seats at the top of the ramp. Surprisingly, Lesnar opened the show, and he had to stay there for the main event. He couldn't leave early, so that must have been a downer for him. To go through blow by blow, Cesaro is the first one eliminated by Lashley, and after that, Lashley gets eliminated by Braun. Braun and Big E have a stare down, which Graves says on commentary, there's a lot of beef in this ring, which, if you remember, was a Vince line all those months ago with something with Finn Balor when he was trying to. That's right. It was when Balor won the number one contender for Brock at the Royal Rumble, and that was when Vince said that there was a lot of beef in this ring. So, Vince-inspired line by Graves. Big E has a cool spot with Strowman. They go back and forth doing big man stuff, but Big E ends up getting the better of Strowman, hitting him with the big ending. But he ends up turning around into an RKO and then gets thrown over the top rope by Sami Zayn, who celebrates prematurely. He walks into an RKO and then into a 619 and then thrown over the top rope and to the floor by Randy Orton to be eliminated. Roman Reigns comes in. He also gets hit with an RKO, and then he also gets hit with the 619. But Randy tries to eliminate him, but instead Roman throws him out, but he throws him over the second rope, not the top rope, so he would not be eliminated there. And I don't know, like it was. I don't want to call it a no-sell by Reigns, but to take an RKO and then a 619 and then immediately toss Randy out of the ring, I don't know, but I guess that happens like when he has to be picked back up and try to be thrown out of the ring. I guess it makes sense a little bit. Ray hits a seated senton on Roman, but then Corbin comes in and throws Ray out. And Rollins focuses in on Corbin, as do Braun and Roman Reigns, as nobody likes Baron Corbin. So they all team together, and Seth eliminates Corbin. And so that would leave just in the ring with Roman, Seth, and Braun. And Roman would go for a spear on Braun, Strowman would sidestep him, so Roman would take out Seth with the spear instead. Roman and Braun, they brawl, and Braun tries to eliminate him. Roman's on the apron, and he's trying to pull Strowman over the top rope. He has him in like a headlock, trying to pull him over the top rope. And so Seth comes in, and he's able to push both of them off and to the floor, eliminating both. And thinking that he won the match because he's the last man standing in the ring, Randy would come in and blindside him and try to throw Rollins out, but he holds on to the ropes. And Randy, quite stupidly, I will say, did his draping DDT thing while he had Seth on the apron and ready to be eliminated. He drapes him back into the ring and hits the DDT. Not the smartest move, but Graves at least covered this and said that it was just instinctual. So that I guess it makes sense. But he has Seth in position to be eliminated and drags him back into the ring. So whatever. But after that, he stalks Seth for an RKO. He jaw jacks at Lesnar. He waits for Rollins to get up, but Rollins ends up stunning him with a kick to the midsection, followed by a stomp, and he throws Randy over the top rope for the win and the rematch against Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. And Heyman cuts a promo afterwards. Seth interrupts him, cuts a fiery babyface promo, vows to stomp Lesnar at SummerSlam and take his title back. And I'll say at least, like, Seth desperately needed this. Whether we want to admit it or not. If Seth had just went on in the direction he was going, he beats Corbin and Lacey in the mixed tag, and then he just goes back to doing whatever it is he was doing, which was a whole lot of nothing. So, whether we want to admit it or not, like, Rollins needed something like this, and him losing the title to cashing in Brock Lesnar and being able to have some sort of fire about him and this redemption story, it far outweighs what he was doing. And I don't know if what they're gonna do is put the title right back on him. Like, I wouldn't mind if they did that in this case. Because, for one, if Brock wins at SummerSlam, I'm going to assume that he's going to hold it probably until Mania, which I'm not for that. So I'm thinking that Rollins is going to get the win back, and hopefully he does, because he desperately needs it. And if he doesn't, I don't know where they go from there with Brock. Unless they do ultimately do my idea and have Bray be the one to finally beat him, which I wouldn't be against, but I'm also not in for this long Brock Lesnar reign. But the problem is, though, is that, as I say this, the redemption storyline for Rollins would be great. For him to beat Brock Lesnar, it'd be awesome. But then the problem becomes, when Seth beats Brock and Brock goes away, what is Seth going to do? He's probably going to go right back to where he was. And it's just that thing where the babyface, like, sometimes the chase is fun, but then the actual title reign becomes stale. And that certainly happened to Rollins. It's happening to Kofi Kingston right now. And it's just difficult. And I don't know if I trust that, should Rollins win the title back, that they'll be able to keep his momentum going and keep the challengers he's facing interesting enough to really be able to enjoy a Rollins title reign to begin with. So it's just tough, because booking baby faces has not been WWE strong suits over the past several years. But we'll see where it goes. hopefully, hopefully Seth is able to recapture whatever momentum he had coming out of WrestleMania and be able to dethrone Lesnar again. And we'll see what we'll see what it all leads to. Maybe we could have Seth versus Bray, and Bray beats Seth instead. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting way too ahead of myself, thinking that Bray is going to be right up at the top, but you got to do it, man. Like he's got to do something impactful early, and I mean, beating Demon Finn Balor, if that is the route they're going, it's not the worst debut, but if they do it where that feud ends up going 3 months instead of one pay-per-view, then it's already ruined. Bray needs to get a big win and then follow that up with more big wins and build to a world title match. So hopefully that is the route they're going. I hope so, at least, and hopefully Rollins is able to get some momentum going into going out of SummerSlam, reclaiming the Universal title. But that was Raw, and as I said, it wasn't like this great show, I guess, in retrospect, but it was not a bore to watch. The 3 hours flew by for me, and if for no other reason, because there was stuff to laugh at with the Mike Kanellis stuff, and the 24/7 stuff was just on another level of hilarity this week. And like that, like my recap of it probably doesn't do it justice. I would definitely recommend watching the segments they did throughout the show for the 24/7 stuff. And Drake Maverick and R-Truth just feuding for eternity over that belt is something I am into. But that's all I'm going to keep you with for today. I'll be back tomorrow with SmackDown. There's supposed to be what they call it, a town hall meeting where Shane McMahon will allow all the superstars to speak their minds, is what I saw in the commercial during this show. So that's probably going to be nauseating, and maybe that's why this Raw was so damn good. There was no Shane McMahon, not a one McMahon on this show. Just the way I like it. Hopefully we can get more of that. Unfortunately, it won't be more of that on SmackDown. But following that, on next Monday, they're doing the Raw reunion show, which kind of came out of nowhere. But that show is going to be in Madison Square Garden, it looks like. So that'll be the first time that WWE has done TV from there in however long. So that's exciting. And Raw reunion, I'm sure it's not going to be like a show that builds too much. It's just going to be nostalgia stuff. But either way, it should be fun, and we'll be here to cover it on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed and do all that cool YouTube stuff if you want to. The thumbs up and the comments, whatever. Let me know what you thought of this Raw show. But until tomorrow, good night.